Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Title Scoop. So this week we are on a new topic and we're going to talk about common names. I'm going to talk about really the title side this week, and then next week we're going to talk a little bit more about the closing side. So when we get a common name, John Smith, John Doe, John Porter, really John is a big one, but there's a lot of others. We need to know we have the right name first off. So we're going to be able to, we want to search a variety of ways. We're going to make sure we have different spellings, variations, nicknames. Maybe we need to search the initials just depending on what this name is. Now, example again, John C. Porter. Maybe he goes by JC. If he does, that's okay, but we still have to verify if there's any judgments or liens against John Porter, John C. Porter. Maybe we have to spell John both ways. Also look at Jonathan both ways. And again, it can get really complex and you can get a lot of judgments that come out. So we're going to talk about what we do when that happens. The other thing that I would note on searching, when we have human searching, it's one thing, we can input a lot of the names. Computers aren't really as smart. They don't necessarily understand our nicknames, right? They may not understand that William and Bill could be the same person. So make sure you put those variations in because you want to make sure you actually are getting any judgments that could be against our person. Now, if you look at your search and it doesn't include a variation, make sure you run it or have your searcher run it because you do want to, again, make sure you have a really good search with all the variations that you could have. Now, when you're reviewing the search, you can obviously eliminate any judgments that aren't our person. So say they run a search on Kim Fields and there's a judgment against Katrina Fields. We can probably get rid of that because Kim and Katrina are not the same person. That's not a common name that would go together. Also be aware, and I'm just saying this more because I have people reach out saying, hey, can you help me? This is a common name. I'm trying to get rid of this judgment. And I'll notice the statute of limitations had already run. So just remember your statute of limitations because sometimes those will run and you can get rid of them just by time. The other thing is if you're a state that recognizes tenants by the entirety, be aware of that because you might be able to get rid of that judgment because of the tenancy that's held. But remember, one caveat with tenants by the entirety is federal judgments and property specific liens. We're still going to need to show those. And then the other thing is this a purchase money mortgage? If you are searching a buyer, if you're a state where you search a buyer, just be aware of purchase money mortgage and whether you could eliminate on that or not raise it. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. If you get, say, 45 judgments and you're trying to determine, you can list them all and then have a really long commitment. Or if you don't have the information and they're really needing the commitment right now, you could raise a general exception that really just says, hey, there's a bunch of judgments and liens out there against John Smith. We are going to need more information, right? We're going to need a personal information affidavit that helps us establish this person's identity and get rid of these judgments or liens if in fact they're not this person. If you guys have not seen a personal information affidavit, as it sounds, you're going to get a lot of information on that. They're also sometimes called identity affidavits. It's going to have addresses for the last 10 years, where the person's lived, where they've worked. It's going to say, have you been in a divorce, bankruptcy? What are those cases? What's your social? What's your date of birth? What are different name variations you've gone by? It's going to basically give us as much information as we can possibly get so we can eliminate these judgments. Usually if you explain to the person, hey, this is why we need this information, they usually will give you it so that you can lower down what judgments could be against them. Now, again, be aware that sometimes there are names like Smith, and it could be Smith Smith, or it could be Smythe. Same with Christina, right? We could have a K or we could have a CH. So again, you just got to be aware of that. And we're going to talk a little bit again about naming conventions next week for foreign names. But just be aware when you have foreign names, we may have to run a lot of variations of the name just so we can make sure that we get it, because not the county and the attorneys filing lawsuits don't always understand the naming conventions. So they get filed against sometimes people that it doesn't look like is our person and it is in fact our person. Now, again, if you get this personal information affidavit and you're looking, you may have to get more information from the court. Sometimes the court, whatever you receive from your searcher, won't tell you everything you need. So you might have to request more documents because sometimes they will have more information, social security number, things like that will help us eliminate. Now, once you've gone through all of your judgments and liens, you've determined that this is in fact, or maybe you can't determine that it's not your person, you can raise a specific exception as to that judgment. Again, we are not going to remove an exception unless we know for a fact it's not them, it's been paid in full at closing, or it's been released. So don't take someone's word for it. Oh, I paid that last year. Obviously, we need something in writing proving that. And if you're ever not sure, call your underwriter. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about just a little bit is this. I think we all know in the industry, but sometimes people outside don't know. If you get a judgment and you don't take care of it and you convey to someone, it's still a judgment on the property, of course. The other thing right now to really be aware of is if someone conveys and right after that they get a judgment or a lien, be aware that that could be a fraudulent conveyance. I've had a couple of those recently where we've actually asked a lot of questions to get to a comfort level, and in one we actually ended up paying it because we did believe it was a fraudulent conveyance, trying to avoid a lien that they knew was coming. So with that, we're going to call it a week. If you guys have questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.